Hey everybody, and welcome to Night New York City. Thank you for joining us from anywhere in the world. We are online. Night is a monthly meetup organized by AugmentedReality.org, a nonprofit with a mission to advance AR in order to advance humanity. We do it by bringing together the best of AR from around the world with the New York City community, and now from anywhere in the world. Given recent events, tonight we are dedicating the meetup to a very important topic, which is near and dear to my heart. AR as a force for social change. And we'll give the stage to Black entrepreneurs, creators, and activists that are using AR and the power of the community to change behavior and policy. My name is Orion Bar, founder of AWE and Super Ventures, and I have one question for you. Are you ready to get augmented? So by joining Nites, you're actually joining a global network of AR professionals that meet now in over 18 cities around the world. And many are actually operating now online during the pandemic, so people can join them from around the world. If you're interested in other cities, just go to awxr.com and select Nites from the drop-down list on the top left, and you can see all the cities. A couple of weeks ago, we had our first AWE online, which was forced on us. Of course, it wasn't the same as meeting in person in California, but as always, we had fantastic content with 130 exhibitors, 200 sessions, over 3,000 attendees, and networking that reflected nearly 750,000 engagements during the 4 days of the event. So I really want to thank those who have attended. I hope you enjoyed it. And the good news is that all these talks are still available in the event platform. So if you want to check out some of the videos, you want to be able to network with some of the attendees that were there, we have a ticket for that. It's usually $99. But for Night members, you have an exclusive discount, which is here on the screen. Just use Night 2020. You can get access for a full year for all the content, really fantastic talks and lists of companies and attendees that hopefully will enable some more networking throughout the year. You're now part of this incredible community. Let's get social. So first, who will be the first to tweet with the hashtag NYC? If you want to check out some of the videos from previous years, probably the largest collection of XR, AR, and VR videos, you can check out our YouTube channel. There's over 2,500 videos there from the past 10 years. Let's get to today's meetup. Juneteenth was celebrated last Friday to commemorate the end of slavery, and that happened in the midst of some massive demonstrations all over the country and around the world in reaction to racial injustice and police brutality. And that happened within the midst of a devastating global pandemic, which has been hurting many families. And all of that is happening in 2020, a year that was meant to be a huge milestone for AR as it enters the mainstream. But many things have changed, obviously. This month at Night New York, given the recent events, we decided to put together a group of fantastic Black XR entrepreneurs, creators, and activists, which I'm really excited to hear from today. And we will dedicate the next hour or more to explore their work and its impact on society, as well as learn what else we can do to use AR as a force for social change. In my opening keynote a couple of weeks ago at AWE, I described a spatial new world. And the idea was to envision the impact of spatial computing on our lives in 2030. So it was sort of my future self telling us what's happening in 2030 with regards to AR and the world. You can check it out on Medium under Super Ventures. And it was recorded before the demonstration started, but made several pertinent points that are really relevant for today. First is that AR and VR are entering the mainstream this year. Here are some of the numbers, the staggering numbers that we're seeing that are showing just the level of adoption of AR and VR. It's something that we have to pause for a second and just see how much we've come. The point that I wanted to make is that when you look back from 2030, AR has reached the mainstream only because the industry decided to focus on inclusion and diversity. And it's not just because, it's the right thing to do, but also because the more diverse AR is, the more it resembles reality. And that's a goal I think everyone in the industry shares. I also describe how in 2030, we would be able to change the behavior of billions of people, as well as influence governments and corporate policies And that's thanks to AR's unique ability to visualize invisible threats and problems in the world. And I think the ability to visualize the invisible elicits a visceral reaction in every individual. The recording was originally in the context of climate change, but I think it applies to any major social issues, like the current movement that we're facing against racial injustice. And I believe that when you see with AR how every action that you take has an impact on the world, it makes you think twice before you act. Then everyone instantly can become an activist. And that, of course, brings to tonight's main discussion. So tonight I want to give the stage to those in the front lines, Black entrepreneurs, creators, activists, using the power of AR and the will of the community to drive social change and justice reform. After that, we'll have a panel with all the speakers that will have Jelena Stewart moderate for us. And that's going to be an opportunity to have some Q&A. So start thinking about some questions. You can post it already in the Q&A. But first, I want to thank our sponsors. This meetup is sponsored by Super Ventures, which is a fund dedicated to investing in early stage AR and VR startups, and by the R Lab. R Lab, for those who don't know, is a city-funded center for AR and VR. It focuses on education, corporate innovation, and startup acceleration in the AR and VR industry. And it's the home of our meetup, so we hope to return soon in person post-pandemic. Super Ventures recently partnered with the R Lab on its startup accelerator, which will open applications for its next accelerator cohort this fall, and it will open the applications in just a few weeks, so stay tuned. Now, usually we start the meetup with an AR Roundup, which kind of covers what happened in the AR and VR world in the past month. But tonight, in order to dedicate the full attention to the topic at hand, what I'd like to recommend for you to do is to take a look at this Medium post by my good friend and former colleague, Tom Emmerich. It's a really fantastic review of everything that happened in the last month. At your own leisure, it would be probably the best way to kind of check out what's happening. And now, let's get to it. So these are our panelists. First, we have Stephen Christian. Stephen is a really cool guy. He's a former football player and a future medical doctor. He's currently a fantastic comic book creator that uses AR to bring to life his illustrations. Stephen, if you're ready.
Yes, I am ready. Okay, so thank you, Ori, for the introduction and giving me the opportunity to talk about some of the stuff that I do. And I'm really kind of honored to be a part of this conversation. And so this is my little avatar. And my name is Stephen Christian. I am a former football player. I used to play at the University of Hawaii and Oregon State. And during that time, I actually had a bilateral hip reconstructive surgery. And so for anybody that's familiar with like the Windows mobile platform, I used to develop on that like back in high school. And then when they discontinued that, I started to explore creativity a little bit more. And so from there, I explored animation. I was a big Boondocks fan. And so I've seen like all the comic strips, I've seen all the cartoons, and I've really tried to recreate that. And for anybody that's familiar with the Boondocks, there's a heavy, social commentary that pervades a lot of the content that the creator made. And with just a lot of my inspirations with anime and really just visual storytelling as a powerful medium to touch the masses, I really started to hone in on my skills in that. And so from there, I've continued to practice, continued to explore, continued to do a whole bunch of different things. And when I retired, it really sort of put me in a crossroads when I retired from playing football, because there wasn't necessarily a lot of specific avenues I could go with outside of just freelancing to explore my creativity and explore sort of like that happy medium between art and tech, and using that as a platform to propel voices and explore different topics. And so literally like last year, I was a math tutor, I was a personal trainer, I was studying for the MCAT and trying to get into medical school. And I did some like mentoring for different coding initiatives for Black and brown communities around Portland and the Bay Area. Since COVID has happened, I've started to dive deeper into really publishing and looking at the power of publishing, and how really, if we're looking at the root of sort of information and access to information, that all stems from books. And that all stems from literacy and being able to navigate sort of the internet. And so seeing sort of publishing as sort of a powerhouse for empowering people, and not only empowering but entertaining and educating people. I really started to go back to the basics of let me focus on making books more accessible, and that's where a lot of my work is really focused on. Where I'm in the AR space, and what I use AR for is really the power of housing multimedia in a package that's accessible. And so for most of my books now, I incorporate audio as if you're listening to an audiobook or a podcast. I incorporate video as if you're watching a YouTube video or any sort of other videos. And I also incorporate gamification, because gamification makes things a lot more engaging. And so what my work focuses on, at least with all my books, is you being able to listen to the book, watch the book, and play the book in ways that you probably never thought you could. And that really shows the power of AR, especially because with a lot of the books that I have, you don't have to know how to read to engage with the book. And I think that sort of notion approach is very, very powerful, especially when we're looking at the disparities in education and in health for Black and brown communities, where illiteracy is very, very big. And for people to feel disenfranchised in education, that will last the rest of their lives. And that's really sort of stood out to me growing up and not really finishing a book cover to cover till I got to college. And so a lot of the work that I do, and I have a demo, a lot of the work that I do is really tying a lot of the physical products that I make in my studio, and I make them more engaging by adding AR to it to enhance the experience. And so and that's one of the initiatives that I'm doing, is really trying to focus on getting Black creators into the space that create in other ways, that use their creativity in other ways, and adding AR into it so that they have an opportunity to be in the tech space and have metrics that are tied to it, but also really sort of like enhance the expressions that they have. And so here's like a little 2-minute video of sort of the stuff that I do, and then I'll kind of go from there. Yep, and that is me.
That's awesome, Stephen. Thank you. Although we have some time for, for questions in the queue in the panel. Let's take one quick question for Stephen. I can just post in the chat.
Hi, Stephen. So wanted to ask you about your experience in the industry and what did you see as barriers to entry in XR?
To be honest, I didn't know where to start. That sort of follows the history of tech because I'm from the Bay Area and I grew up around sort of like the Silicon Valley boom. And one of the things was that when things started to pick up, you know, people that I knew, like in my community, we didn't know that that stuff was happening until till it was valued at $2 billion, you know, or it was valued at that. And so then it felt like we were sort of in this game of catch up when we grew up around, we're growing up in all these areas that are sort of the hubs for it. And so I think just sort of the access has been really just like where to start or where to even like where to start, where to even like learn this stuff. I just stumbled upon it, you know, going to a conference, but you know, and so I think that's really the big thing for me.
But
interesting.
We have, two quick questions for you. One is where can you find your work, and two is what AR engine are you using to create your work?
Yeah, so you can find my work at iltopia.com. Iltopia is really the main one where I have like a lot of my books. And if you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I'm pretty active on Twitter still. And I just posted that in the chat as well.
Great. Awesome. So that's great for now. Stephen, thanks very much. And now we're moving to our next speaker. Folks, next speaker is Chris Lafayette. Chris is an accomplished entrepreneur who's been working in XR for a number of years now in education, training, healthcare, and wellness, and just announced a mentorship program for Black entrepreneurs, which I can't wait to hear about. Chris has also been instrumental with AW events with our mission to increase representation of people of color in XR. And I'm really excited to have you with us, Chris.
Ori, it's so good to be here. So one, thank you for the opportunity. You know, it's always good to speak in association with AWE, given the history and the years that we've had together. I really appreciate that. You see me?
All right. Yeah.
All right. Strong. So I'm really happy to be here with the AWE affiliation. And, you know, to be candid that, you know, in times past, AWE itself hasn't always got it right when it comes to inclusion and diversity, you know, and Ori and I've had that discussion with Tishu and others that have been part of it. But I like what I'm seeing with the AWE platform and making the attempt. We still have a lot of road and a lot of track to cover, but making the attempt to say, hey, you know what? How do we become more inclusive in the immersive spaces? Because as I've said before, and I've been saying for some time now, that if we are going to extend reality, then we have to bring reality with it. Else, it's a fictitious, false reality, and it's not something that I want to extend myself into. That's number one. Just like what the brother said here, and I want to say that I'm here today, and when we talk about culture and we talk about diversity and inclusion, I want people to understand and know that culture is technology. You know, we tend to separate those two and say, well, you have technology and culture. But culture is technology. And when we talk about ecosystems, we tend to think of software and hardware. But really, an ecosystem are people when we talk about eco-culture. And so one of the things that I've been seeing for some time in this industry, and when it comes to emergent technologies, as I study emergent technologies, is we left too many people behind. I mean, we see this discussion happening right now, not just here in Silicon Valley, but around the country and around the world, about the deficit and the decline in the treatment of Blacks in America horizontally, and then when we especially start to look at technology itself. And I too grew up around the time where we saw the bubble and we saw Google and Apple before my very eyes become incredibly wealthy overnight. And Facebook and other platforms, and people that look like me didn't even know what to do with this type of technology, let alone how to approach it. And then when I found myself in Silicon Valley, I came to Silicon Valley with black colored skin, and it wasn't a huge welcoming party. But there's a lot that could be said on that. So fast forward, how does a kid from Oakland, from East Oakland, find himself here speaking with you guys, traveling around the country, around the world, and become a so-called expert in this technology? Because I was given an opportunity, because I grew up with a hacker. You know, my dad was that, and I saw that. And so I had, at least on a monocle level, an idea of which way to go when it comes to technology. But there's so many people that look like me across the bridge in Oakland and Berkeley and Richmond and in other cities around the country that do not even know which way to go. And there's so many people I've had such a pleasure with in this industry, such as Ori, and so many other people, and so many women that I've learned under, so many men that I've learned under, that I've had such an opportunity to build with, to bond with, to learn with, to see the spectacular and fantastic technology, that it's occurred to me that these people, these databases in our minds, the brain, because there's no computational system that's more proficient and prolific than the human brain. How do I take these minds and pair them together with people that look like me, that come from where I come from? How do I bring them together so that I could take a Ori Inbar and take a Bethany or a Jake or a Deontay and put them in the same digital room so that they can learn the way to go? And I feel like every single person on this panel and every single person watching this has more of understanding of technology, even minimally, than what the majority of the people in this country, in the United States, that look like me have. And so I think that we're governors, should be governed or viewed with some type of social responsibility. Thank you for starting talking about that, Ori, that we have some type of social responsibility to step forward and say, you know what? We are all building this technology, but if we don't get what's behind and what we left behind and bring it to where we're at, then we all failed, and our technology will never be as great as we envision it to be. Our products won't be identifiable to all people. You'll continue to see disrupt and social disrupt in this country. We're already we're dealing with two plagues or two pandemics. We're dealing with COVID-19, but we're dealing with a racial pandemic. And both of those financially have sizable impact. So there's a price to pay when we ignore what we should not ignore socially. So I appreciate the courage. I have to first say I appreciate the courage for Ori to invite us here, because it is doing the right thing, Ori. And to say, you know what? I want to see more people that look like Christopher Lafayette or other people on this panel here to be able to contribute to that. Then we'll have better VR and AR experiences. I don't want to be invited to another VR room where my only two options is a white male or a white female with blonde hair. I don't look like that. Right? So I launched this program last week called the Black Technology Mentorship Program. It's taken off. I think we have almost 100 mentors. We have dozens of mentees that have signed up. We have a ton of allies. We had our first meeting last week. It went fantastic. We have other people that are joining on daily. Go ahead, Ori.
That's how it works.
So here's how it goes. So announcing and launching this, I had to ask myself, I'm not out of this. I had to ask myself and say, what am I doing for people that look like me. I can point the finger all day, but I got 3 pointed back at me. What am I doing? So I had to look at that and say, you know, I'm not a protester, and I don't knock those who do. Your business is your own. Everyone has a role to play. They must be allowed to play them. Well, what's my role? So I said, you know, I'm going to create a program where I get qualified technologists, and then I get mentees or students, that people that want to know or have shown to some degree some desire to want to understand more about technology, Unity Engine, Unreal Engine, things like that. And I'm going to put them together in a room. And look, we're no longer location biased, so now we're dealing with digital. So I'm going to put them in a digital sphere, this virtual. Isn't that funny how the world has defined what virtual is? See, we tend to think that virtual is 3D constructs, but we can't dismiss 2D constructs, you know? We think that our technology is so far when it comes to AR and VR, but the world's still wrapping their mind around how to unmute a Zoom conference. So to pair those two together, mentor and mentee, to show them the way. And so how it works is we're having a summer program this summer where we have a lot of training for our mentors, not our mentees, but our mentors, because I want to make sure that our mentors that have raised their hands and volunteered, I want them to understand that what they're looking to approach and how to be the best that they can be, whether they're curriculum developing or whether they're going to give a soft batch lecture, or whether I'm going to put Ori in a room to tell some kids that have no idea what AR is and have no idea what AR Cloud is. I want him to know how to approach the situation better. So we're going to have some training sessions. We have 9 of them this summer, beginning July 8th. I welcome anybody to go to Christopher Lafayette and sign up for that. We also have our allies that aren't necessarily mentors, but they're helping us get resources, because I want to make sure that these families, these children and adults have Wi-Fi. We benefit off so many things that we have, folks, but a lot of people don't have Wi-Fi, tablets, laptops, not even a decent working phone, right? So I want to make sure they have the resources they need so that they can do a Zoom conference. It's so cavalier and so easy for us to have a Zoom, but there's so many people that look like me and that don't look like me that don't even have the right resources to have a Zoom, and they don't even know what Zoom is. So we're going to have that. And then in autumn, we're going to begin our training for the career track, for entrepreneur track, right? Classes, training, hackathons, platform development, where the youth can actually finish their platforms and build an XR, build an AI, build a roboticism, robotic kits, put all that stuff together and have a whole lot of fun doing it. And before you know it, they'll be creating the next simulated digital holodeck, if you will. And I think it's fantastic that we're having this conversation. There's no guilt here. This is a guilt-free environment. This is a guilt-free environment. I was raised and taught and a lot about technology by people that look like Ori more so than people that look like me. So I'm a product of the product. I know what it benefits to be around people that have an understanding on where to go. I can remember years ago hearing Ori. I'm just using him as an example. He was like, hearing Ori talk about AR Cloud, it blew my mind. No one talks about that where I'm from. And I said, man, if I can get 10,000 people on this screen to listen to that, how much would it change their mind? So I want to instill in your hearts and minds tonight, those of you who are listening, to go on that website and sign up to become a mentor. I'm not even asking you for your money. Give up an hour of your whole entire year, an hour, to teach thousands of kids and influence. And that hour that may seem so simple to you could be their whole entire difference of their lives. That's what I'm going for.
Chris, that is an amazing program. Let's pause here. We'll get back to it in the panel. But I want to give a chance to our other panelists to introduce themselves. Don't mind. Next we have April Boyd Noronha, which has been an advocate and influencer for STEM inclusion of women and minorities, and more recently joined the board of the XR Safety and Security Organization that has a special focus on underpositioned populations. So with that, April, would love to hear kind of what you've been working on and how we can all take part in it.
Sure. Thank you, Ori, for the invite and to meeting all the other esteemed panelists here tonight as well, and those out there in Zoom world. But I serve the XR Safety Initiative, otherwise known as XRSI, and their mission is to help build safe and immersive digital, safe and inclusive digital experiences. Under the umbrella of that is the CyberXR Coalition, which I serve as the lead. And that's the diversity and inclusion arm of the XRSI. So in this role, I make sure that the cybersecurity and XR realms are truly inclusive by assembling a premier group of experts, influencers, leaders, all within that cybersecurity and XR ecosystem. And that helps us to further lead the narrative of inclusion in those realms. Now, on a personal note, because people always ask me, how did you get into that? You know, you're a Black female, blah, 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 right? So I always lean towards the core of the catalyst of what I do. And I call it my 3 Ps. So first and foremost, I'm a parent. I have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. My oldest daughter is a hacker. She's studying, she's 21, she's studying in cybersecurity. So she always threatens me when we have an argument that she'll hack my phone or whatever. So I have to be really careful with her. I have my second daughter is 18 and she's studying to be an engineer. And then my son is 14 and he is an aspiring drone pilot. So I firmly believe in immersing our youth, next gen, in emerging technologies, starting at home. Second, I also am a professor where I teach health information management. So even on that health tech side, we still need to be visible. So I teach in that realm. And then I also teach computer information systems and cybersecurity. So I'm a parent, professor, and equally important, a STEM consultant. So I help parents, I help educators, I help organizations bridge that gap with the new generation and emerging technologies.
Fantastic. So just one quick question before we move on. How can people here on this meetup can join? What can they do for the xrsi.org mission?
You know, anytime I have the platform, I always stress 3 easy ways to assist any initiative in this realm. You know, you can either think of yourself as an ally, where you're strategically positioning our cause or the cause of all that are the panelists here today, as an advocate, where you consistently promote our collective goals. You speak about it when we're not in the room, you promote it, you help lift up this initiative. And then also as an active participant on panels such as myself and the other panelists here tonight, making sure that the word is out, making sure that people are aware of that there are platforms, that there are programs that are active in this arena of diversity and inclusion in CyberXR.
Fantastic. We'll pause here and get back to that on the panel. Next, we want to hear from Glenn and Idris. These guys are well-known XR activists in the New York community, creative technologies that use the power of AR to highlight underrepresented narratives, and have been very active in recent weeks, recent events. So would love to hear, Glenn, from you, and Idris, if you're here. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having us here. And yeah, active is a word for it right here. We're in the Bronx, pushing for the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York to become the local congresswoman. She's coming in right now. Hi, Ronnie.
Hi. I just voted with my mommy.
Awesome. Yeah, she just voted with her mom. Sorry. But back to the business. Let me share my screen real quick. All right. So when I was in first grade, I remember that I had to color Christopher Columbus's boats, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. But our teacher never told us about the Taino slaves that were at the bottom of those boats when they were going back to Spain. And so the problem that we're really addressing is that in a lot of ways, the United States focuses on Eurocentric forms of history that are often layered within white supremacist narratives. And this really permeates throughout our textbooks, our public spaces, our monuments, our cultural institutions. And so we wanted to, I started Movers and Shakers in April of 2017 to change up how we talk about history and look at a more holistic approach. The other issue is that when it comes to activism, it's really practiced in the same way as we've done in the civil rights movement in the 60s, women's rights movement in the early 1900s, where you hold up a sign and you can scream as loud as you can. But meanwhile, in 2020, you can call a cab with an app on your phone. So when it comes to social justice issues, we wanted to create an R&D process to figure out how to innovate in a similar way when it comes to life and death issues. And so we started off in New York City with this R&D process focused on trying to get rid of racist statues with a special focus on Christopher Columbus. And so we created an augmented reality installation on the true story of Christopher Columbus, and we used it as an anchor to host teach-ins in public spaces. We also did different performance pieces, such as the slave auction in Union Square to tie into the start of the transatlantic slave trade. I ran the New York City Marathon in chains to raise awareness for an op-ed and went viral, and the traction sort of got out. And we held teach-ins in places like Columbus Circle and Times Square and in 125th Street in Harlem to get this technology to the people as quickly as possible. And the word started to get out. Did a TED Talk on this, and it was featured on the homepage of TED.com. And you know, this just started in 2017, but literally as recently as yesterday, the Museum of Natural History decided to finally remove their racist statue of Teddy Roosevelt that's on the front of it. But it's not all sunshine. Back in August 2017, I was across the street at this moment in Charlottesville, Virginia, when Nazis and Klansmen decided to arrange in military formations and protest against the removal of Confederate monuments. And so this really speaks to the white fragility that exists and the tension that is embedded in these narratives. It goes really deep. And so right now in 2020, there are 5,100 statues of people in the United States. There are 718 Confederate statues that would have owned people like Idris and myself. And there's 394 female monuments. That's less than 10%. And New York City doesn't fare much better. There's 155 men. There are 6 women, there's 23 animals, and Mayor de Blasio decided to remove 2 problematic statues as of yesterday. And so if institutions aren't willing to elevate our narratives, then we just got to do it ourselves. And so that's where augmented reality comes in. And so we're building out a suite of augmented reality monuments of women, people of color, the LGBTQIA+ community. And the value proposition that we're bringing up here is that we can make them any size, we can put them anywhere, we can do it with or without permission, and we can make hundreds for the price of one. And so our vision is like a woke version of Pokemon Go, if you will, where our customers specifically is municipal governments as well as schools. So from the municipal government's perspective, we're talking to New York City about figuring out how to license these access to our content and put these monuments all over the city. And then we also want to wrap up curricula around these monuments and have a scavenger hunt type of situation happen and put them in schools. And so, yeah, I'll leave it up to Idris to continue.
You're on mute, Idris.
Unmuting. You need to, I'm gonna share my screen really quickly. Ooh, okay, present. And so let me just wait till it plays. Okay. And so when we were building monuments as a public art display to create context and nuance around these spots around New York City, but ever since COVID hit, we really thought that we had to kind of re-approach how we are going about educating people about these monuments and like spreading access beyond just physical location. And so we kind of used another AR feature, which is plane detection, to be able to allow anyone to place these monuments in their home. and learn about them. And we want to create curricula around this kind of framework for engaging with 3D monuments in your home for kids in schools across the country. And so there's a few advantages that we've seen to AR technology and engaging in this cutting edge tech. Edutainment is one approach that we've had to it. We've also think that disrupting the digital space is something big that AR allows us to do. And the next part I'll talk about in the second is cloud rendering, which will increase our apps file size capacity and allow us to kind of cram more into these AR experiences. And so with a lot of what's going on and as an extension of our Monuments project, we wanted to apply that to an actual educational setting and get our technology and our culturally responsive curriculum into classes with majority Black and Brown students so they can actually learn about their true history. And so we won, last year we won the Verizon's National 5G EdTech Challenge, where they were looking for creative applications of 5G technology in the classroom. And so that really allowed us to build out an app that we're calling Unsung. And that's a multiplayer augmented reality learning experience that highlights women musicians of color that really use their platforms to advocate for social change and overcome adversity. And so this is a really modular experience where kids get to explore the lives of these 4 women, Odetta Holmes, Ella Shepherd, Florence Mills, and Tiny Davis, and really extends their learning beyond just reading and into an interactive realm where students can really just put themselves in these stories. And so this, what you see here, is called a story box. And so it's kind of a digital narrative sculpture that we've created that can be broken up into 4 different sections. And so this is what the kids in their classroom, all with an iPad, would see on the table in front of them. And they would be able to engage with that collaboratively. And so each story box provides the students with the 6 degrees of freedom experience where they have to, and this is like kind of what the inside of these experiences will look like. And in these experiences, they have to work together to solve puzzles that relate to each moment in time for these students, for these figures. And so this is mainly aimed towards 6th to 8th grade English students, and they'll be able to read passages that align with Common Core standards, and then input the correct answers to those questions in our app. And those correct answers would kind of unlock these different AR experiences in rooms. And so students can really peel back the layers of time here as if they were there and teleport into specific scenes throughout history. And so just to end this all off, this story box technology really gives a way for kids to learn about the figures that they usually don't hear about in school and do so in a revolutionary and innovative way. And so when kids are outside of the classroom, the way they really intake information is extremely visual: social media, video games, etc. But when they're in the classroom, they really don't have that same level of engagement as they do at home because they aren't as immersed in the experience like they are with every other thing. And the content doesn't resonate with them either. But using our content and our technology, the students are really finally able to engage with information and learn in a similarly engaging fashion that they do in their free time with their friends. And so we take that extremely visual and interactive process and combine that with the educational and historical content that the students need to learn and really blend them together. And so as a lot of the previous people were saying, exposing Black and brown kids to these different kinds of technologies just opens up their perspectives to what's possible. And so currently these kids are really struggling to get exposure in STEAM classes in particular. However, those same kids really use this technology all day, every day. A lot of these communities of color have top-tier technology and social media users, top-tier content producers. However, we're not building these technologies and platforms that we're using and generating revenue for. And so the first step to capitalizing on our influence as a community is getting into the ground root and the educational level and teaching these kids about their own history as well as the immersive technologies that they can use and broadening their perspective on what they can be when they grow up. And I'll stop it there.
Incredible.
So yeah, as Idris was saying, basically what we're trying to do is activism on 2 fronts. One is activism in terms of elevating consciousness, in terms of who you can be and the technology that you're touching. And the other aspect is boots on the ground activism. So none of us live in a cave. We know what the racial climate is like right now during this period of COVID. And so we have a unique opportunity right now to finish the work that was started during the civil rights movement, I fundamentally believe. But in order to do that, we have to elevate the conversation from not just police brutality, but just looking at a more holistic approach to what liberation looks like. And that starts through education. And so we're launching an initiative, it's called the Black Prism Collective. And the idea is that we're going to pair graphic designers, artists, organizers, technologists, both Black, people of color, and white allies together to essentially create graphic representations on social media and ultimately through augmented reality that teach you about the nuance of issues that we don't know how to talk about as a society in America. And the thing is, there are a lot of white allies that are doing that work right now, but at the end of the day, when sports comes back, or when people are able to go outside and when people are doing other things, you can't compete with a situation where people are willing to pay to have fun. So you got to make it fun yourself. So that's what the Black Prism Collective, is all about. And so if you go to the last slide, Shavonna Newsom, who you saw before, is running for Congress. This is a perfect example. Basically, the way we're going to start off is we have these QR codes that are stickers. And with the sticker, you could hold your phone over it, and it just leads you to whatever initiative that we want to educate you about, essentially. And so I'm not going to speak much on it now because we're still in the planning phases, but on Saturday, if you follow us on Instagram at Movers and Shakers NYC, we're going to be doing an action where we're going to gather a lot of information, not through augmented reality at first, like I said, but we're going to basically break down the root causes of specific issues. And we want these stickers to be all over the city. And so, yeah, that's our approach from top to bottom in terms of boots on the ground activism and elevating consciousness. But at the end of the day, our goal is simply to make activism fun so that it lasts.
That's awesome. Thank you, Glenn and Idris, from Movers and Shakers New York. That we can't wait to see more of your work on the ground and on, I guess, the cyberspace. All right, folks, so for next, we want to bring back all the speakers for a panel. And to lead the panel, we have a fantastic XR producer. She comes from the music world. She curated TEDx Harlem. She worked on Live 360 streaming events in the VR Accelerator, and is a regular at All Night New York City. Jelena, take it away.
Thanks so much for that. So, yeah, I wanted to ask a few questions. We'll start with you, April, and wanted to hear more about how XR complements your agenda and some of the recent things you've been working on.
Yeah. So that's a good question. I think I would rephrase it as that XR is the agenda of the Cyber XR coalition. We realize that it being an emerging trend, that we need to be on the forefront of leading that narrative. And if I could share my screen, I'll bring this up quickly. That actually is our guide, our what we just released recently, the Immersive Technology Standards 4, that focus on 4 core focal points of accessibility for all, inclusion, ethics, and safety. And when we were the collective CyberXR Coalition was trying to determine what best to first launch or release, we settled on these 4 areas, and it is downloadable at this time. People can go to our website, cyberxr.org, to download it, digest it, figure out what our next steps that they can take in coordination with us. When you talk about what's next or what you can do, you can join the coalition as a group. As I mentioned before, the CyberXR Coalition is a collective coalition of about 10 to 12 organizations that bring their game to the table as a part of the coalition. So and it's a global coalition as well. So we bring that extra oomph or dynamic to that table as the CyberXR Coalition. So when we talk about how it complements the agenda, XR and cybersecurity is our agenda as the CyberXR Coalition.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. Hopefully XR will be the agenda of more companies.
Definitely.
So Chris, you talked about your exposure a bit in terms of how you came to work in this industry and the with these technologies. And I just wanted to ask you to elaborate on that a bit more in terms of how did you come to XR as your platform, and how do you think XR and AR can further your ideas?
Well, I typically, and I think that's a good question, and thank you. And Jolene, I think you're doing a fantastic job, and it's really pleasing. It's really happy. I feel really good to see a moderator, that looks like me. I mean, just to be candid at this point, I just don't think it's the time to not be candid. I think it is appropriate to say how we feel about these things. I don't want to just leave that residually in my mind. To your question, how I got involved with XR. Well, I'm an emerging technologist, so I'm involved with emerging technologies. I do believe that every single technology that we have out there embodies what then I call the eco-habitat. And within the eco-habitat, we have artificial intelligence, we have XR, which is flanked by VR, and it's flanked by AR, AI that's flanked by machine learning and deep learning, neural kinetics and things of that nature, roboticism and IoT and wearables. And so I've looked at technology as a whole and been studying technology as a whole that abides within this eco-habitat. But what happens when these technologies begin to grow in scale, which like we're seeing right now? And these technologies are growing in scale, and then they begin to pair together with what I call the merge pairing, which is really, when you start to look at that, at the merge pairing, it's really the fundamental constructs of the smart city. And so when you look at XR and extended reality, if you will, is how does AI behave with VR? How does AI behave with AR? How does wearables and IoT and the advent rise of 5G, how does that affect immersive spaces? How do we operate when we talk about XR? So I'm studying it from a human factors, hyper-fidelity perspective, Jelena, because we need to understand this. And when COVID jumped off, a lot of people said, VR's here, it's time for virtual, and that couldn't be anywhere further from the case. It's good today, and it has its use cases, but please understand this, everyone, that VR just developed sight. We just developed sight. And virtual reality is not a single variable equation, it's a multi-variable equation. That means we're still in the womb, and we just developed sight. But we have touch, we have sound, we have taste, we have all the different type of hyperfidelity, right, that we're looking at, and the human factors on how this technology behaves. And so we're a long way off from the original intentions that was intentionalized decades ago of what VR could be, but we have taken really good steps. And so being a steward and a historian on the subject, looking at that, I want to make sure that we build it right. And that dovetails completely what I started off saying, that we must have everybody in the narrative to extend this reality. And a lot of what April even touched on and the standards that they built out touches on that as far as how we need to look at that. So again, if we're going to extend reality, then we must bring reality with it and not just some of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And thank you for your kind words. And thank you, Ori, for creating this space for us. I signed up for your mentorship program today, and didn't realize I already missed the first meeting. You mentioned it was last week, so.
Jelena, it was an ally meeting. We had over 14 people. Look, 14 people that were like, I'm interested. How do we, get involved? I mean, isn't it something where you put out a call for action and people actually jump on it? It wasn't like I was trying to raise a seed round or something like that. but I felt more nervous than trying to raise capital to get humans to do things, you know? I think it's sometimes almost easier to make money and to earn capital than to get people to say, okay, click a like or do this or participate. So anybody that moves on this, that means more to me than you put in anything in my pocket. That's real. It says a lot to me about your character and about you have the desire to get. I was always taught this: give back which was freely given to you. Servant leadership. And I just have such a new expectation by hearing these Black geniuses on this panel that I hope in some way, whether it's with my program or not, that they're going to give back and say, look, let me give back because somebody gave them an opportunity to even say what came out of their mouths today. That's real. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I think that we all have it's a really unique period in time, and we are very fortunate to have access to these tools, have the awareness of them as well as the access to them. And in the spirit of what movers and shakers said, I think that it's a really opportune time to complete the work that was started by the civil rights movement. And with that, I have a last question for Glenn and Idris, and I'm just curious about whether or not or how has the use of AR with movers and shakers changed in light of all the recent wave of events and social action.
Can you hear me?
You were way ahead of your time, so it's great to see the culmination of a lot of, you know, what you were at the forefront of a few years ago when you started Movers and Shakers.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, there's two main things I would say. There's COVID, and then there's the race. I'll touch upon the race part right now. So we're trying to figure out how it's going to change the game, I think. What I mean by that is with this idea with stickers, I see a large opportunity to teach about social issues in quick, rapid ways that help people understand things at an intuitive level. And it goes, I'm bad with names, but it goes back to the first speaker. Like, you know, you shouldn't need a PhD to be able to digest and understand all these things. So if anyone's interested in figuring out what that means, please reach out to us and join the Black Prism Collective. We're glad that we have a solid foundation and background in AR, but I think that is the next step. And then with COVID, you just explained it before, so I guess you want to do it again?
Yeah, I think with COVID, we were big into geolocation and how we can use AR to gather people around certain sites and in the public space. But it's immediately when COVID happened, we were starting like, because we had all these different other functionalities in AR that kind of brought the world to you, or brought that digital content to your immediate environment. And so for this since COVID, we've just been focusing on developing our applications in that regard. Putting more of the public applications of the technology on the back burner and kind of front loading all of the work into where we can use this more as a tool for accessibility, to really get the content and educate people regardless of where on the planet they are. And yeah, so that's kind of how we shifted.
Okay, great, thank you. I know we're running out of time, so just wanted to pass the baton back to Ori and open up the panel for any Q&A.
I mean, we have some more time if you had some more questions that, I mean, I think Stephen didn't have a chance to address any questions in this round.
Sure, I know that one of the questions that had actually originally been posed to Stephen was about the engine that he uses in
Say it again?
question to everyone on the panel is really about, you know, how can people help out? I mean, you mentioned a few initiatives that people can join, but in general, I mean, how can people use the technology? How can people use their time to help support this movement?
Yeah, I think I could speak to that. So for most of my sort of AR development, AR journey, it's been predicated on really the free resources that are available. Because I mean, if you try to get a class or something like that, that's going to run you at least $3,000-4,000. And so, you know, we're already in a pandemic and we don't have a lot of resources as is. And then you compound sort of the lack of access and institutions that sort of shun you out of it. What I've done is, you know, I hold a master's degree. And so, you know, I've through that process, I've learned how to be resourceful, but I'm also a teaching artist. And so, you know, I as I sort of journey and learn all these things, I found the power of sort of documenting and blogging and YouTubing and podcasting. And I've essentially just like created a platform for, you know, as I learn things, I try to teach other people. And so it's you know, it's all predicated on that, you know, like you know, what's the saying, like you know, each one teach one do, or like, you know, you guys know what the saying is, but really like paying it forward. And so for people that like you know, follow the work that I do, most of the stuff that I give away is for free, because my big thing is to get more Black people in AR, so that they don't get left behind. And often, growing up for me, the lack of access was tied to money. You know, my parents didn't have money to buy these things. I didn't have money to pay for these things, and so using the power of the internet and, you know, distancing and technology to really just make it available for free and packaging it in a way that that is easily accessible. And so I posted a link for anyone that is like interested in like learning AR without code, and it's like a 3-hour course that I just put together, and any of the donations are going to People's Breakfast of Oakland. And one of my buddies started that, and they just announced that they're doing free COVID testing. And so any donations will be going to that and a few other causes that that I'm connected with. And so, yeah.
So as far as we're concerned, obviously AR lays at the center of our approach to activism, but our body of work is tremendously multidisciplinary. And so going back to the point of the Black Prism Collective, we're going to have an open call. And within that open call, you're going to see, you know, like I said, artists, activists, technologists, graphic designers, people of from all different walks of life. And even if you don't have a specialized skill set, you need people to hand out the stickers. We need people to organize the demonstrations. So as long as you are interested in redefining how we treat each other in this country in terms of human rights, in terms of how we allocate resources, in terms of just expressing love, that at a fundamental level is enough. And then from there, we would love to speak to anyone that would like to contribute to the movement, and then we can brainstorm together how we can move forward.
And Jillian, I'd like to just add that one common denominator that we see with all the panels here is that we each found our role: activists, allies, you know, as active participants in our unique niche, our activities, or what we can thrive in. And that further propels us or pivots us to where we need to go. You know, when people ask, what can we do? Where can we go? First, determine what your role in this big dynamic world of XR and AR and all that is. You know, start where you are. All the panelists agree with today as well that, you know, we started where we were. None of us rolled over in the bed and were masters of this, or had a masterful list of people we can tap into. It evolves, but you first need to figure out where your role is. One thing with the Cyber XR Coalition, we determined that, and we talked about this, that at a time such as this, one recurring theme that we hear is standards. We need standards. And that's why we released our standards. And that is why we specifically chose those 4 areas. Ethics, hello. I think that's at the top of all of our platforms. Accessibility for all. There are issues on all levels of assessing XR and just cybersecurity. Being in a safe environment, and then let it be inclusive. So that's why we chose those 4 areas. I think all the panels can agree with that, that is the core theme within all of what we do, whether it's advocacy, being an artist, or being an ally.
That's fantastic. I couldn't agree more that those 4 pillars are core to what the success will look like. Is there anything I missed or anything that anybody else wants to add?
There's another question from Albert Baldwin, which, by the way, is really happy about this panel and want to thank all of you guys for your participation and your contribution. And he's asking what is being done as far as investment capital for Black people in America? And I'm wondering, I don't know, maybe Chris has some on that because that's part of his focus, but anyone else wants to comment on that?
I think more has to be done, because I think we're seeing sort of the we're seeing a new found awareness as of last week, where more the mainstream adoption of actually supporting Black businesses and Black organizations is starting to, like, you know, starting to be a thing. And often the criticism is like, okay, how long is this going to actually continue? Rather than this should be the start of how things, you know, start to compound and flourish. And so I think the first thing is really, you know, looking at, in order for us to increase that 3% of Black executive positions, we have to start with what we're doing in terms of, like, supporting Black local businesses and Black local organizations, because by supporting those, then it compounds after that. And so I think it's, you know, I think we have a lot of work to do, and I'm curious to see what the numbers look like post-COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I think Arlen Hamilton and Backstage Capital and Harlem Capital uptown with, well, John Henry used to be on it, but there are groups that are trying to pool resources together to get money to Black founders. I think that's a start. I don't think it does much in the grand scheme of things, because in the end of the day, most scalable businesses tend to fail. So as far as getting money to Black founders, it's a start, but in terms of increasing Black wealth, that's a whole different conversation. The median Black wealth is targeting at hitting $0 by the year 2053. So if we're talking about like Black people being stakeholders in this country, the conversation has to transition over to shareholders and what that means in a meaningful way. And there are a lot of complex politics around that and involve different points of view, but I challenge everyone to expand the scope of what it means to just support Black business. We're talking about Black wealth, much different conversation.
Okay, folks, I'd like to bring into, or Chris, do you want to add anything on that? So you're back.
Yeah, sure. I mean, could you elaborate on the question so I can make sure I understand?
I mean, the question was just about what's being done as far as investment capital for Black people in America.
Not enough. I mean, that's the answer. It's certainly not enough. You know, I admire people blacking out their Facebook page and Black Lives Matter hashtag and, you know, speaking for solidarity, which I think 80% of that is a good marketing schema for most companies and corporations. But in terms of Black investments in this country, it's not enough. And I even hold your feet to the fire, Ori, given how much I feel for you, that I'd like to see, you know, Super Ventures I'd really like to see you guys kick in and say, let me look at some Black technology built products for XR. I just think that's so important. It's certainly not the case. Over here in Sand Hill Road, They don't deal too well with people that look like me. I'm not invited. I know a lot of investors. I'm not invited to come have a seat over there to show what it is that I'd like to show them, or thousands of other hidden geniuses, what they've been building in their garages. How is it that Steve Wozniak and Stephen Jobs can build an Apple in a garage, go turn around and sell prototypes, and then get it venture funded? You've got other people that look like me that are in hotel rooms, garages, and cars that are building just as good a tech, if not better. But how come they can't even get a seat at the table to get an interview, to get a simple pitch in? I think we just need to do a better job. Look, the data speaks for itself. You don't have to believe me. The numbers don't lie. It's poor. It's bad, and there's a lot. We have a lot of wood to chop on that. We just do.
Thanks, Chris. So,
Sure.
first of all, I just added here Edwin Rogers with the regular online.
Still need to.
And I wanted to join the panel, but we were already kind of booked, so I decided let's give him a couple minutes here towards the end to introduce himself and add to the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really, thank you, Ari, for allowing me to join a little late. And I definitely, love Jalene, know her very well. Chris, I definitely have signed up to, be a part of your team. So I definitely love to mentor. And Glenn, I think we've spoken before and met, but I don't think we've met personally. So April, I haven't met you. Stephen, I haven't met you, but it's nice meeting you virtually today. My name is Edwin Rogers, and my company is VR Video. I do 360 video content creation. I know, and admire Glenn's work, being one of the few people that take 360 cameras to protests. And I think that there's not a lot of us doing 360 journalism in a serious way. And but that's mainly what I've been doing for the past, I would say, 4 years at NBC News. But most recently, ever since COVID, I've been working on my own channel. And I don't want to get too much, but I'll just share my screen really quick. I just want to share, because some of the conversation has been about, like, what are we going to do, and how are we going to have our voices heard, and what can we do? So my strategy has been to simply be visible and build my own. So, and do the hard thing. So I've been researching really hard on how to build my own OTT platform while I have a YouTube channel that you can visit. Just YouTube, Edwin, VR Video, add VR Video. So you have to go youtube.com/VR Video. I have my own channel, which is vrvideo.tv, which I put into Roku devices recently. So if anybody has a Roku, search vrvideo.tv and rate it 5 stars, please. Because I think the problem is that, I worked for NBC News for 4 years, and I've done lots of stories. You can see kind of my creative work with 360 video, but we need to start telling our own stories. We need to start sharing, being visible and showing brown faces, and finding our friends and interviewing them. And so that's what I've been focused on, and that's what I'm trying to create, just like a way of sharing what we can do. On the flip side too, I have my own technology that I'm developing as well. It's called Merciful. I'll share that real quick. And what that is literally, instead of using Zoom, you could use a Merciful. So how does that work? I mean, right now it's kind of open, to be honest. So you could take any string. So literally, I'm gonna say Ori for now, just because that's the first person I saw. And I create a room, and we could all go to this room. This is gonna close soon. and bingo, I have a Skype call room. I can just do the same thing again, immerseful.com/Ori, and text this to someone. Now I'm Ori, and have a conversation. I'm gonna close that just because I showed you it works and it's fast. There's other things that do this, like Whereby and other kind of tools that do this kind of stuff. But since COVID, the Zoom like fast, easy to use technology is what we've been focusing on, as well as making it white labeled so that you can have this inside of your own organization. So you don't have to go to Zoom every time you want to have a call, but you could have an AWE, like video.awe.com be your own platform. So that's what that's what I've been working on, and with co-founder as well, trying to create technologies. And also another element of this is 360 video. So you can connect the 360 camera to this platform and have a conversation inside of a 360 video. I think that's very important, especially now that people are really trapped in their own homes. It allows for a level of immersion, and it works on phones. And so how I've been working on inclusion is not starting with headset first, but with mobile first, so that, like you were saying, a young kid in Harlem who doesn't have $500 for an Oculus Quest or whatever, but has a phone, which most kids do have phones, let's admit. Come on, really, seriously, everybody's got a phone. You know, not everybody might not have the best cell plan, everybody might not have the best service, but everybody kind of has a phone. And so I want my platform to work on a phone, so that's why I've been focusing strictly on web AR, web technologies, and web VR.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, so that's what I'm working on.
So thanks for that. Some really cool technology. You guys should check it out. I know Edwin sometimes doesn't kind of blow his own horn, but he's some really heavy tech guy, especially when it comes to video and streaming. All right, folks, we're almost at the end. Just want to hear kind of parting words from each one of you, and how people can get in touch with you. So we'll start with Stephen.
Yeah. So, you know, I think, you know, I really thank you all for the opportunity. I would say I'm probably the newbie in this, in the whole AR space. I think I officially started learning AR December 11th of last year. And so I feel like I've made pretty good headway since then. But, you know, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak and share all the stuff that I'm doing. And, you know, you guys could find me at Stuck on an Island and Iltopia. I think you could see it right here. Yeah, you could see on Twitter and Instagram. And, you know, really check me out on Patreon, check me out on YouTube. And really, I tend to find myself oversharing a lot of the work that I do. And it really focuses around sort of empowering people to look at AR, not from a tech enthusiast standpoint, but really as an opportunity and a utility to enhance the stuff that you're doing in the real world. And so, yep, check me out at Iltopia or Stuck on an Island. And, you know, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Stephen. I love your work. It's super cool. April.
Yes, well, once again, I want to encourage everyone that's here and on the panel to continue to stretch yourself and to figure out what your unique role is in this dynamic ecosystem of XR. Start where you are and go from there. I didn't wake up being an advocate or enthusiast for Cyber XR or that arena, but that's where I find myself now, and I thrive in that because it was purposeful and intentional. You can catch us in our standards that we just released for immersive technology at cyberxr.org.
Thank you, April. Super important work. Next, let's do Glenn and Idris.
Oh, hey, Glenn, you're muted. Can we unmute Glenn?
Now it should.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so we don't consider ourselves experts by any stretch of the imagination. We're willing to work with anyone that wants to see a more equitable world, period. So as I mentioned before, we're going to have our open call that we'll be launching this week. So you can follow us at Movers and Shakers NYC on Instagram. And then my chat could share that handle as well as our personal handles, which is the same on Instagram and Twitter. We'll be releasing our open call and information about our upcoming action that will be happening on Saturday. Yeah.
Thanks, Glenn. Idris, you know what Zoom is doing with your hair is just mind-blowing.
Oh yeah, I don't know what's going on. I turned the light on and then it got all messed up. Oh no, I don't know.
Beautiful. Any
what?
Any parting words before we conclude?
No, I think Glenn said it all. Just feel free to reach out to us. And I guess I do just want to stress again how it resonated with everyone here on the panel, and especially how much we've had to work on our own to figure this out. I learned a lot of this AR coding development by myself, and through workshopping things with Glenn, just us two in rooms starting in 2017. And we got to where we are today. So I think anything is possible as long as you stay determined and keep on the path and open to learning.
Thank you, Idris. Chris.
Yeah, Ori, sure. Thanks once again for the opportunity. Thanks for having the courage to invite us here to speak. Glenn, Idris, Stephen, Miss April, even Edwin, Jelena. I hope the very best for you guys. Idris, you guys aren't alone in what you're doing. I know you guys may be new. Glenn, you don't have to be an expert. You have great and beautiful ideas. However I can help, feel free to reach out, and let's bridge. You know what I'm saying? ChristopherLafayette.com. And more importantly, let me say this. For all you that came out to hear what we've been working on and what we've had to express and share, thank you for giving us an audience so that we can be able to speak with you. And I hope that you guys got something out of everything that was said. And I look forward to bridging with you. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Hit me up directly. Let's build.
Awesome. Jelena, you're now in the dark in your capture room.
Yeah.
How do you summarize it?
Quickly. So just wanted to thank everybody. Thank you, Ori, for the opportunity to hold the space and begin this very important conversation around diversity and inclusion. And thank you, April, Glenn, Idris, Chris, and Stephen. It's been a lot of fun and really eye-opening learning more about what all of you do. And I really am excited to continue with all of you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jelena. Folks, once again, thank you all for coming to speak to us and share your work with us. And thank for all the participants which stuck up to the end of it. I can tell you that, from the on-night perspective, this is not going to be a one-time thing. We'll try to maintain good representation in all the meetups that we have and the other events. So we'll try to do our part. For Christopher, we can always do better. So we'll end with that. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for having us.
Bye. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.